welcome to the show. Today we have someone super amazing. I'm just going to call this a rebel spotlight. Truth is, like, this dude would be a guest on the show whether he was a rebel or not, but like, I'm lucky enough to be able to coach him. So I'm just tooting my own horn because he's so cool that me coaching him makes me way more cool. And it's just all very exciting. But welcome, Carlo Moss.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hello, amazing human.
Oh, hey, amazing human yourself.
It's so exciting. Okay, so for the people who are listening who do not know all about the amazing of your life, obviously Awaken the Rebel started out as like rebel against a 9-to-5, live an extraordinary life. And there was a huge creative streak, you know, me having a stand-up comedy background and all that. So will you tell my audience a little bit about some of the super impressive things you've done? And feel free to be like a cheesy nerd and brag, because I think sometimes it's easier to like really tune into what someone's advice they're giving when they like feel, you know, like they're like, all right, he's on some shit. So feel free. Toot your own horn, Bill. Let's do this.
I'll toot as much as possible. I would venture to guess that the majority of people would recognize me from a YouTube show that I started about 7 years ago called Most Popular Girls in School. It's stop motion Barbies. It's basically South Park meets Mean Girls. We ended up doing 5 seasons on YouTube. It was one of the biggest scripted series in the history of YouTube. It started completely as an improv scene in my living room. We built it up to be an entire fully functioning show, and then that allowed me to then create a stop motion studio where we went out and would take work for hire and would also sell our own shows. So I have a series at True TV called Dr. Havoc's Diary.
That's awesome.
That we did. The second season is over there. We did that on full screen for the first season. And I run that stop motion studio. I have a consulting business, and I also write a lot of comedy, TV series, movies, short form web content.
You've sold
all
feature
that kind of
films.
Stuff. Yeah.
It's just so cool. Like, honestly, you guys, I'm so like, this dude just the coolest. And I don't even know how this happened, but like my neighbor is his mom, and she was like, yeah, you should just do a session with my son. He's kind of like transitioning his career. I'm like, sounds good. Super cool neighbor. And it just turns out like he's just done so much cool shit. And it was just like so inspiring for me to be in his orbit and just like learn about his life. And so I really wanted to have him on because I know his ass going to inspire you too, boo. So here we are. So, okay. So before we get into tons of juicy stuff that I know we want to talk about today, I want to ask you, for my audience, just to know a little bit of like, how did you even get into doing the creative stuff?
Absolutely. So, when I went to school for experimental theater, so like I was one of those rare kids who, when I went to college, I knew exactly what I wanted to do.
Oh my gosh, good for you.
I went to school in Santa Barbara, studied experimental theater, knew I wanted to act. Grew up in LA, and so when I moved back to LA, I expected the entire entertainment industry to be like, "Oh my God, you're here!
Yay!
Oh, we can finally make good stuff now." And just spent a couple of years just eating shit hard, you know,
right? As we all do.
Oh yeah, exactly. Waiting tables and doing everything that I could to stay afloat, but fell in love with sketch and improv, and realized that the love for me was in writing. It wasn't in acting. And eventually came to realize, like, 2 things that I hate are having people tell me what to do.
Yeah. So
probably not great to be an actor if you don't enjoy being told what to do.
So true.
Right? And also, I kind of hate being on set.
Yeah.
Especially as an actor. I can be on set all day as a writer or producer, but if I have to sit there and converse with other actors all the time and sit there and wait and not be in charge of what's going on, that doesn't make me happy. So when I got to about 25, I realized, like, I came out here with a dream and I failed hard. So what do I love and what do I like doing and like what do I actually want to do? Realized that the love for me was in writing. And really at that point, I'd been doing comedy for so many years. I took the step of saying, like, I'm just going to write what makes me laugh. Like, there was a part of me that was really far up my own asshole trying to like say something bigger with my comedy. And I want every sketch that I write to be the most impactful, most meaningful thing ever and really make you think. And then I was like, every now and then you can write a poop joke and it puts a smile on my face. So why the hell not?
Right.
that was the impetus to what became Most Popular Girls, which was the first thing that kind of caught fire on YouTube for me and ended up turning into a whole career. And I spent a couple of years working side jobs while producing that show to turn it into an actual thing. And then in 2013 was finally able to quit every side job and be like, okay, this is my career now. I'm a writer and I'm a producer.
That's so cool.
And I make things for a living.
You make things?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's such a dream. I mean, it's so fun to encounter people who have like really made it happen. Like even Brian, who you just saw, you know, it's like he's a radio host. Like he gets to be on the mic and somehow he gets like this like stable career salary job, but he also still gets to really be creative. So yeah, it's interesting because I first started and I was all like obsessed with entrepreneurship, rebel against 9 to 5 and be an entrepreneur. And then I like somewhere in the motherhood lane realized like I'm really tired actually. And I'm cool with freelancing, bro. Like give me a job and I'll work it. Just give me some good money and let's keep it simple. So really it's about, to me, kind of like, I'm just reflecting back to you, like you, even in knowing what you wanted in college, it's really cool to hear you even hit a wall at 25 and went like, okay, well, if I don't like people telling me what to do and I don't like what I'm doing when I'm on the set, then clearly acting isn't the right thing. So I feel like even in you fully knowing, it's like you still were like navigating and tuning inward and really feeling into like what works for you and what doesn't. And I feel like that's what a lot of the people who listen to my podcast are really figuring out. Like, how do we tune inward? How do we slow down? How do we really listen to ourselves to find our own map? So, okay, so then what happened next? So then Most Popular Girls happened.
So Most Popular Girls happens, and for a while I kind of just like rode that wave, and like, and that was my job, was doing Most Popular Girls full time. And when that took off, you know, we got signed to my writing partner and I got signed to a big agency, and they were like, here, go take a tour of all the studios and they're gonna ask you questions. And the first question that we got was like, so what else are you guys working on? It was like, oh right, we have to write other stuff too, because the thing that we wrote that we're here for is already a thing. Yeah. And so that led to this vision of like, all right, well, maybe we could just like start a stop motion studio, because we figured out a different way to do stop motion. And like I said, I fell in love with the process of writing and of telling jokes in that way and story structure. And that became the next phase of my life. And what was cool is that I'm now able to look at it as like, oh cool, that was a piece of my life. That wasn't my whole life. And for a while it was my whole life, and I thought it was going to be my whole life. Yeah. And you know, I don't have an animation background at all. I have a comedy background. I have an artist's background. And so from Most Popular Girls, we sold another show, Dr. Havoc's Diary, and that kind of that becoming a thing was what allowed us to then create an actual studio. We had a studio in Culver City for a couple of years that was a fully functioning stop motion studio where we took on work for hire, did commercials, awesome. And then also, you know, did our own shows and everything. Yeah. Love it. It's like so exciting. I know you guys have like millions of views on YouTube. Yep. I think even like 1 million subscribers. Like, yeah, it's like insane. Yeah, I think we just crossed, for Most Popular Girls, we just crossed about 150 million viewers, and that's crazy, dude. Right about 1 million subscribers. That's insane. It's nuts. That's insane. All for pooping Barbies. Oh my gosh, we love the freaking pooping Barbies. Yeah. Holy crap, you know, like. Okay, so tell me this. I know that you and I, you know, you and I have been kind of like coaching for, I think, 5 months. I think right around there. Yeah, around 5 months. And your mama, my sweet little neighbor, she's so cute. In the history of the world. She's amazing. She's so great. My gosh, total jackpot in the mom world. You really, it's good. And she got you. She's jackpot in the son world too, actually. Yeah. You guys both did good. So she was just like telling me that you were in a career transition. So what was happening at the time that she introduced us? So basically, you know, we're talking about November of last year. Hit a point where the stop motion studio, I was coming to the realization, was not like that was a piece. That was not what needed to be my entire life. Like, like I said, like I don't animate. I don't like I can write and I can manage, but I found myself doing the majority of my time, I was doing things that I didn't love and that I wasn't the best at. And once I hit that realization, and it was a natural kind of pause point because the lease was up on our studio, and at the time we didn't have a new project to go sign another lease for, and we weren't about to be like, all right, let's go sign a 10-year lease on a new studio or whatever. And so there was a lot happening where I could, I'm very hippy dippy, so I'm going to throw around words like the universe and all that. But I felt very much like the universe was giving me a big kick in the ass of like, think differently about your life and what it could be. And
I love that.
The big thing for me was that I had met the person that I knew I was going to spend my life with. My girlfriend and I have been together for almost 2 years now. And as that relationship developed, for the first time in my life, I had a way to identify myself that was not just my career. I found I had something bigger that wasn't my career. So I asked myself, if the career is not the most important thing, then what does your life look like? And I realized that I had all of these different skills, all of these different things that I was good at and that I was very special at, that I wasn't spending my time doing, that I was instead doing the work of the business that had to be done in order to keep the doors open. But it wasn't even necessarily keeping the doors open anymore, and it wasn't allowing me to go out and find new work. And so I'd been spending a lot of time working with younger creators and thinking about how basically being the person that I wish I had 5 years ago, of teaching them the things that I didn't know 5 years ago, of like, when you go in for a pitch, here's the type of things that you want to be talking about. Don't tell them about how many views you have on YouTube. Tell them about how the characters are going to interact with each other, because that's a mistake that I fully made. And like realizing like, okay, what are these things that I'm special at? And then turning those into an actual line of business. Where I then said, okay, if the stop motion thing is a piece and it's not my whole life, what are the other pieces and what do they look like? And so I started a consulting company to go along with the stop motion company and to go along with the writing, because and I really came to terms with the fact of, okay, anytime I try to fit myself into one particular lane or one particular box or one particular title, the universe slaps me on the face and says, no, that's not you. Exactly. Like, and that anytime I go, all right, well, fuck it, I'll do my own thing and make up a thing. And the universe goes, yep. And it responds in kind. That's cool. Instead it was taking all of those little pieces and saying like, all right, that's me. It's hard. It's a hard thing to define what it is I do exactly, because I do a whole bunch of things, and that's okay, and that's special, and that's something to be celebrated. Yeah,
that's so cool. Gosh, that's so cool. And and one would argue like you've obviously done really well for your life. Like, you knew what you wanted to do in college. You changed course when you understood what you liked better. You met an amazing woman, and you really were at a turning point when I met you. But one could argue, like, maybe you didn't really need a coach. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you've figured it out this far. I think you're going to be all right. But I just feel like you and I vibe crazy well. Like, just, I'm so happy, like, after all of our sessions.
Absolutely.
Like a huge nerd. I mean, I literally recorded a solo cast after our session yesterday.
Oh my God, that makes me so happy.
What a nerd. I mean, and that's the beautiful thing about creativity and inspiration. Like, I feel like they're sort of like symbiotic, and they like build off of each other, like just being around you inspires me, and then it inspires me to be creative, and that just continues to keep going. It's like, it's just a ripple effect. So I guess I want to ask you a little bit for the people who are listening, because I think sometimes for me it's hard to justify my career. Like, why did I choose coaching? Why would anyone need a coach? Why would anyone pay good money for a coach? There is a little bit of that I fully relate to, where I'm like, yeah, totally, you should just go get a therapist, because hopefully it's in your network. You don't have to pay for it. Or you don't freaking need it. You can figure it out on your own. But I know that coaching has 100% changed my entire life, which is why I chose this as my career. And I feel like it's having a really cool effect on you.
It's ridiculous.
So
like,
yeah,
the amount
please.
of effect it's having on me.
You're so cute. It's ridiculous. I'm just going to like take that in. Yeah. So let us educate us, my darling.
Yeah, well, I mean, like the best example that I think I can give is I remember after one of our sessions, I was talking about my vision for this consulting business and what it could be, and I had been sitting for what felt like forever on this idea, and I'd been sitting on, all right, I need to create a logo, I need to do all of the branding for it, because that's literally what the company does, is logos and branding and all that kind of stuff. So I should probably do it for the company itself first.
Right.
But I was sitting there procrastinating on it and wanting to do it and knowing that I could do it, and I was sitting there trying to decide on names and kicking those back and forth. Which is all a function of the ADHD that I have, that I was recently diagnosed with like 2 weeks ago, which has been a complete life change. But, I was sitting there kicking around all these ideas, unable to land on something. Mm-hmm. And we went in, and I gave you like a list of names. I'm like, here's what I'm thinking about, here's what I'm thinking about, here's what I'm thinking about. We zeroed in almost immediately on like, okay, this is the name, done. That thing is off the plate. Mm-hmm. And then literally the next day I went through and sat down and told myself, okay. I was imbued with this amazing energy after our session, and I was able to sit down and go, okay, today all you have to do is get all of the logo stuff done. Yeah. So that you can go print a business card. And being able to come off of that like energy to create was something that I hadn't felt before. And it like you pointed out to me a couple of sessions ago, like our first session, I said, here's what I want my life to look like. This is everything that I want it to entail. And 6-7 months later, whatever it's been, that is literally what my life is now. And I would not have imagined it. I wouldn't have imagined that it could have happened that fast. And if we hadn't have had that, if I hadn't have had that moment of like being able to lay out, here's what I want it to look like, say it out loud, have it repeated back to me in notes form, afterwards, I wouldn't be able to then 6 months later be like, oh shit.
Oh, we did that
right?
shit. Oh, we said we wanted it and we did that
exactly.
shit.
Of like literally like I want to move here. I want my life to be like this. I want the majority of my life to be writing by the beach and living by the beach with my girlfriend. Yeah. And I'd been wanting to move to the beach for the last 12 years.
Crazy.
And then that finally happened.
And it's just so cool too, because like honestly, we were only coaching for like 90 days by the time you were moving. Like it really didn't take long and that's what's so weirdly powerful about coaching is once you take the ideas out of your head, right? Like they're not just tinkering around like in a freaking pinball machine in there, just like blah, 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 or feeling unrealistic, or you're talking yourself out of them. No, you're talking to a human. You're taking the ideas out. That person is writing them down and then emailing them back to you. And then you meet with them every month to like stay in alignment with the vision. Right. It's so simple and practical, and yet that's exactly what changes your life, just really making it real, writing it down, having someone like, for us to decide like, okay, what are you going to do this month? Okay, great. Let's make sure that it is in alignment with your true north. And your true north is living by the beach, writing, doing your thing. So I don't know. It's just so funny because like coaching is my life. So to me, it's like very simple. But like every time it changes someone's life, I'm like, this is just so amazing. And it's so exciting to me to and you know what? It's funny too, because I do remember like in our third or fourth session, and we only meet once a month, right? It's not like we're like up in each other's business 24/7. But like in our third or fourth session, I was like, this is so cool. Because I remember in our first session, you saying like, this is what you wanted. And like now you're doing it. Yeah. And that's another thing in my mind that I'm learning about coaching that's cool, is that sometimes we do not celebrate our accomplishments because we're just so busy being on the hedonic treadmill and going for the next thing that we don't even take a minute to go look back and go like, oh shit, like we made that thing happen that we said we wanted to do. So yeah, I just love what's happening in your life. I just, already shit was going banging before you met me. So like, I cannot take credit for any of that. And honestly, I really can't take credit for anything that's been happening until like, for the last 5 months or whatever.
Feel like you kind of should.
Okay, I'll just a little bit.
Yeah. Own that shit.
You're super cute. Yeah, but it's such a joy, for me to be part of your process and like just celebrate with you in your wins and be with you in whatever the like tricky parts might be and strategize with you. Like I definitely feel there's like sort of a creative synergy that happens. Like, you know, when we picked your name and you're like, boom, you had more energy to go make shit happen, you know?
Yeah.
So thank you for being so damn amazing.
You're the amazing one.
I'm like too like literally I'm like, oh my God, Carlo. I like lucked out with this dude for sure. So, okay. So moving on, you did mention something very interesting.
Yeah.
And I just feel like now we're just going to move into like, you can just like school me big time. Because you did say that like over the last 2 weeks, last 2 weeks ago, you got an official ADHD diagnosis.
Correct.
Which, first of all, I'm fascinated with the fact that you had undiagnosed ADHD your whole life and created such success. So like power to you, that's freaking amazing.
Thank you.
And now that you kind of have clarity on how your brain works, holy shit, man, like the world is your freaking oyster. So it's like really cool. But one of the main reasons I was like, hell yeah, we gotta have Carlo on is because not only like who you are and what you do and what you're about and all the things, but also I feel like there's tons of creative types out there who have undiagnosed ADHD and they just don't know it, you know? So they might be struggling in certain ways because they're not aware that their brain just operates differently. So, you know, it's education time, Carlo.
Absolutely. So like the whole thing with me and that I'm learning about ADHD for the longest time, I would like warn people that I was working with or whatever. I'm like, okay, just so you know, like my brain is kind of weird with the way that I think, having no idea that like that was literally true. And you know, this has really been a thing over the last like 6 months or so that I literally stumbled on a Twitter thread.
Okay.
Like 6 months ago that this journalist had written about his ADHD and how he deals with it as an adult and how it affects him and how others can have empathy for him and to not think that it's a child's disease, right?
Yeah.
Or a child's disorder or whatever, and that it really has tangible effects on adults. And what's crazy for me in my experience is I've talked to so many people that I work with regularly in the last couple of weeks, letting them know like, oh yeah, I found out that I have pretty severe ADHD, and they were like, oh my God, me too.
Oh wow.
and I was like, how does this keep happening? How did we not talk about this? How is this not like a part of your identity?
Yeah.
So that's been really interesting to me. It's something that's super prevalent in creative types. It's super prevalent in high achieving types.
Okay.
Which certainly to me it felt counterintuitive because I like growing up I got really good grades in school. I was valedictorian of every class
Carlo.
that I was in. To be fair though, I went to a high school that had 30 people in my class.
You don't need to be fair. Just bring that dirty. I like it all day.
But so
you're so cute.
You know, for so long, like there was a part of me that identified with being smart and that my brain was my advantage.
Yeah.
And that I couldn't conceive and my teachers couldn't conceive of overachieving Carlo has something askew with his brain. And about 2-3 years ago, had what was pretty close to a nervous breakdown, was struggling with a lot of anxiety, just had so much on my plate, couldn't get through any of it, had panic attacks, realized that I had a big problem with anxiety. I was having a lot of anxiety attacks. Now I understand that was actually a function of the ADHD. And what I started to do was I really, got into therapy, started talking to a therapist about what I thought was anxiety, started creating these practices that would help alleviate my anxiety, having no idea that those practices were actually helping me to cope with ADHD. But I got to a place where with my work, and because I was my own boss, it manifested itself kind of, let's say, more violently. Okay. Right? Because there wasn't any external structure for me.
Yeah. That makes so much sense. Right? You're like left to your own devices.
Like I can literally go into the office and do nothing if I want to. There's not a boss that's going to show up and tell me to get to work.
Yeah.
Which in the past I did have. I've had the experience of being at a job and having a boss be like, hey, can you kind of like not do your own thing learning Photoshop right now, like we have clients, But so I was struggling a lot with going into the office, having things to do, and instead bouncing from Twitter to Reddit to fantasy football to I'm gonna do some work, and feeling like I was literally being pulled, and feeling like I literally, like, it was painful to start work. And I would have a lot of projects, so I'd procrastinate a lot, not out of laziness, but out of basically a fear of boredom.
Okay.
And a fear of what happens when all the work ends.
Yeah.
Right? So if I can put everything off until the absolute last deadline, and I know I'm great in the clutch. Like, I know, I know if I got 6 hours to finish this thing, I'm going to do it, and it's going to be great.
Totally.
And so I'm going to put it off, all along thinking that was just a personality defect.
Yeah.
That was just a little bit.
You're just a procrastinator.
I'm just
Carlo.
a procrastinator. I'm just lazy. I'm just an artist or whatever. And then I start to read more and more about what ADHD feels like, what ADHD looks like, what the experience is for people with ADHD. And I went, oh, that is me to a T. That's exactly what I'm feeling. Ended up going in, to a doctor that specialized in ADD and ADHD, ran a full battery of tests.
Cool.
And she explained to me, like, given all the tests, that at times my attention can bounce around so much, especially when I'm not engaged. I can be so inconsistent that I basically land in, like, the less than 1 percentile. And at the same time, when I am engaged, I can shoot all the way up to the 100th percentile.
Oh, wow.
When I am engaged, and it feels like almost like crisis mode. Yeah. Which is exactly what I felt all of my life. Yeah. I found myself over and over again trying to almost invent crises, or there was a lot of, all right, I'm going to indulge myself as much as possible tonight because tomorrow I'm getting my shit together. And I became addicted to that feeling of getting my shit together. Yeah. And that became a repetitive structure because I needed that non-boredom in my life.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride.
Okay, so now you know, which is super juicy. And then, so, like, what's different? Like, let's say you kind of get whatever you need to manage it, whether that's, like, therapy or medication or whatever. Right. So then, like, what is that going to mean for you now? Like, does this mean you are going to be able to focus for longer periods of time? Or, you know what I mean? Like, what's going to be different now that you have the clarity? Yeah, absolutely. So it's the difference between where I was before, where I thought that everyone's experience with work was, oh, well, you have to go and refresh Twitter 100 times before you start your work. Right? Well, of course. Like, and then you have to close out a tab and reopen it, and close out a tab and reopen it, and then obviously beat yourself up a whole bunch because you wasted an hour. You feel terrible. And then you have to use that feeling of terribleness to then propel yourself into getting something done. Yeah. And so now I'm at a point where I feel like in everything that I do, I can sit down and I can go to work. It feels like, the thing that I've been saying a lot is, it feels like my head and my brain was a bunch of scattered papers at the bottom of a backpack. And every time that I had to start a task or remember something, I had to sort through all of those papers and find it somewhere in there. And just like a messy person has, like, a system in their mess, sometimes I'd be able to, like, recall it pretty quickly of, like, oh, right, that paper is stuffed between those 2 yellow papers halfway through the stack, more or less. Yeah. But that was the process of any task or anything that I needed to remember. And now it feels like I have a filing system in my head. I feel like there are file folders. Oh, and so nice. And if a stray thought comes in and says, hey, what about this? I can go, okay, cool. I'm going to address you you go in this file. You are categorized as things that I should do in a week. And I'm going to put you away. Whereas before, it would be like, yes, I have to do that. I have to think about it right now. I have to focus on it, almost to the point of compulsion. Like I would feel like
like almost a compulsion of like, you need to check Twitter, you need to check your email, you need to check your email. Come on, check your email, come on, until I would actually do it.
That's so interesting. It almost sounds like an attention addict, as in like it almost sounds like the voice you'd hear in your head if you were like a gambler,
right?
You like really needed to go gamble, or like an alcoholic, you really needed a drink. But it's like the same voice, but really just about like different ways to divert your attention, almost.
Exactly, and one of the best things that I heard is that it's labeled as attention deficit disorder, but basically you have too much attention. Really, it's
not a deficit.
Yeah,
people.
Exactly. It's a surplus of attention.
Yeah,
and it's one of the best images that I heard about it, or one of the best metaphors, was it's basically like having, like, you have a Ferrari, it can go as fast as possible, and it's this awesome gift, but you have to learn how to drive that Ferrari. And if you don't understand what ADHD is and what you're dealing with, you're like a 6-year-old trying to drive a Ferrari. And you're going to drive it into a wall. Right. Because you're going so freaking fast that you can't control it. And so by both practice and, in some instances, medication, you're able to learn how to drive that.
You harness that Ferrari.
Exactly. And doing things like putting structure in place and creating rules for yourself, which sounds like really not fun, but is actually like super fun and I nerd out about.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. But all of our brains thrive on structure, whether we want to admit it or not, which is especially hard for creative type brains.
Totally.
And artist type brains, because we've been fed this narrative of like, you're only a true artist if you wake up at 11 hungover from doing too much heroin and then throw paint on a canvas like Jackson Pollock. And if you wake up to an alarm clock at 6:30 in the morning, you're working for the fucking man, even if you're writing for your own thing or whatever, or you're a square and you're not taking advantage of the fact that you get to work for yourself. Yeah. When in actuality, our brains thrive on structure. Right. ADHD brains especially thrive on structure. And if structure is not there, our brains will seek to create it in any way that it can, which is what bad habits are. Yeah. That's our brain trying to go, all right, well, you're not giving me anything here, so at the very least, I know I get a drink at 7:00 every night. Yeah. And so, and eventually those take root and take hold, and it's our brains trying to find structure on some level.
It's so interesting. Yeah. So interesting that you said creative types and high performers. Okay, so tell me this. For the people who are listening, who are like, shit, maybe I have ADHD. Yeah. What are symptoms? Like, how would they know to maybe start doing testing or whatever it was that you went and did? Like, what would make them think, like, okay, maybe I have that?
Totally. So I'm literally pulling out my notebook, which has a long list of all of these things, because that's one of the things that my ADHD what really helps my ADHD is lists after lists after lists.
Love it.
It's lists and spreadsheets and all kinds of stuff. So I'll kind of just run through some of these. You stop me if something sounds interesting. Okay, cool. Exactly. So and these are particular. Most of these are particular to me. Because ADHD can manifest itself in very different ways in different people. Okay, good to know. Yeah, like I have a friend that I do a bunch of work with, who his ADHD, we have the same diagnosis, but it manifests itself in almost completely opposite ways.
Okay, that's very interesting.
So for me, it was things like procrastination, difficulty starting projects, compiling mile-long to-do lists that you could never realistically finish, distractibility. And almost a compulsion to distraction, like we were talking about. Like, you have to check Twitter. You have to check Twitter. Oh, you have to do this. You have to do this. It would feel like my brain would be like there was a ping pong ball in there just bouncing around constantly. Yeah. Simple tasks feel like mountains. So so things like going to get a car wash, doing your laundry, taking out the trash. I would have trash that needed to be taken out sit there for 2 days when I was like working from home. And you just like, it feels like climbing Mount Everest. Along with that, paying bills on time is really hard. And it's this cycle of you forget to pay a bill, or you don't set a bill on auto pay, and then you beat yourself up, and then you feel normal again because that's the norm, because that's helping you feel alive almost. An inability to focus on conversation. A lot of times when I would be talking to people, I would constantly be recorrecting myself in the conversation of like, no, listen to the person.
Focus.
No, listen to the person.
Focus, Carlo.
Right here. Exactly.
Am I boring you right now?
No, not at all.
I was like, oh.
But yeah, that was a big thing of constant recorrection of like every 3 seconds, be like, oh, right. Yeah, we're here. And that to me was normal conversation. A need to move, shift postures, fidgeting, which is something that you kind of think of in like a hyperactive child, right? A child that has ADHD, you think of them constantly moving, constantly bouncing around. Yeah. In adults, it might manifest itself more subtly of a constant fidget, a constant need to shift positions. I know for me, like, there were times when it was really hard for me to just lay on the couch with my girlfriend. Of like, I constantly felt like I needed to move. And it's also very difficult for me to sit and watch TV without doing something else. The other day, like literally the day that I got my diagnosis, I was like, I just want to see something. And I put on a couple of YouTube videos on my TV about ADHD because I was just on a binge of trying to learn everything. And I was like, I'm going to put my phone on the other side of the room. Yeah. Put everything away. Can I sit here for half an hour and just watch a bunch of these?
And how did it go?
Within like 2 minutes, I was picking my nails and
finding something else to do,
and moving the pillows, like And it's difficult because like I would constantly have to remind myself, almost memento like, of like, you enjoy watching the basketball game more than looking at Twitter while watching the basketball game. But like I just couldn't sit and watch one thing. It's almost a compulsion to multitask. Totally. Without an ability to multitask. Let's see some other stuff I wrote down here. For me, a big one was one distraction would set me off course for 20 minutes. It's like I'd be sitting there working, and a lot of times in our studio we had like an open office plan, which is death for someone with ADHD, because there's just distractions everywhere, and anybody can come talk to you at any moment. And so what I have to do now is I have to explain to people, I'll work with headphones on or whatever, and I'll explain to them like, hey, just so you know, if you come to me just with like a joke or whatever to say what's up, for you, that is a minute distraction from whatever you're working. For me, it will now take me 20 minutes to get back to the thing that I was doing. Because after I talk to you, I'm going to look at my computer and think that I need to check some stuff. I'm going to want to go pee. I'm going to want to go get some water. Whereas before, I was in my zone of hyper focus, which is another hallmark of ADHD, is most people with ADHD also have the ability to hyper focus.
That's interesting.
And when you get locked in like nobody else can. It's this kind of like superpower.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Yeah. Difficulty working in an open office environment, feeling of paralysis, almost like you're underwater, with whether it's the ideas that are bouncing around in your head, not being able to start one thing, bouncing from one thing to another, almost feeling like it is impossible for you to get out from underneath it. Another one was reading like an entire page and having no idea what you just read.
I definitely have ADHD.
Right.
There's like so many things. I'm like,
Yeah. Like I said before, inability to multitask, and then struggles with consistency and finishing projects. And then two that are just like that were interesting to me that are mouth breathing. If you breathe through your mouth more than your nose, you're more prone to having ADHD.
That's interesting.
Which I didn't know.
Okay.
And I grew up with asthma as a kid, so that, and then family history.
Okay. Like if anyone else has it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And like, I'm almost certain that my dad had it. I was on a call with my aunt the other day. She's like, oh my God. Like after talking to her about this, she was like, I totally have it.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, this all makes sense.
It's all coming together.
Yeah.
This is so cool.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And it's actually really cool because I feel like I feel like a lot of Awaken the Rebel is really ultimately, in the big picture, self-actualization.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like with this, I feel like diagnosis has a connotation on it that I don't like. But
Right.
like, let's just call it with this clarity, because
Yeah.
I feel like that's really what it is.
Exactly.
You are becoming more self-actualized. You get how you work better.
Mm-hmm.
You get why things may have been challenging in the past for you. You now get what environments or structures or whatever you need to thrive in the future. That is so fucking exciting.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
Like,
it's just that, like, all of it depends on framing, right? You can frame it as like, oh, I got a diagnosis for my sickness, or
right.
I just got a shit ton of clarity on how my brain works.
Perfect.
Like, so, like I literally got to have a doctor be like, here's what goes on in your brain that's different from everybody else. So
really
now you
cool.
know how to work with that brain.
It's so cool.
You know, it's the difference from, oh, I'm broken, I'm not good enough in some way, to, oh, I have a superpower.
Oh my gosh, it's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really want to learn more about it, honestly.
It's so fascinating.
Because it was really, really interesting to me how you had said, you know, there are certain things I had struggled with in the past, like anxiety. You said you were having panic attacks.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how many people are struggling with anxiety or depression or some form of just discomfort of being able to manage themselves in their life? And really, it's just like undiagnosed ADHD.
Right. Well, and also the beauty of ADHD treatment from like a cognitive behavioral therapy point of view is that whether or not you have ADHD, a lot of the structures and practices that you need to put in place for ADHD are beneficial to everyone.
Yeah, that's cool.
You know, for me, like when I thought I just had anxiety, what I did was like I would start creating rules for myself and treating them as experiments of like, okay, I'm going to start plugging my phone in the living room instead of my bedroom every night and see how that affects my anxiety. Oh, I feel a lot better.
Yeah.
You know, and being like, all right, I'm just going to do that from now on. Like, there's nobody that wouldn't benefit from that.
Totally.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. The beginnings of your lifestyle brand, my friend.
Yeah, there you go.
It's awesome. Yeah. I mean, I just feel like this is so helpful and like so many people could learn so much from it. So for you, let's say hypothetically someone's in the listenership, the audience, whatever we want to call it, right? And they're listening and they're questioning and they're thinking, you know, I might have ADHD based on what I'm learning from Carlo right now. It's possible. But maybe they have the stigma on it. And so they don't want to go find out because they're afraid.
Sure.
Okay. Which that'll happen, you know, whatever. I want to know, what do you believe it would have cost you? Like, let's say hypothetically you didn't go take the tests and figure it out.
Yeah.
And you just continued on your life without getting this new clarity.
Right.
What would that path cost you?
I think in general terms, I would have gone through and my vision and my opinion of myself would have continued to get pushed down a peg, down a peg, down a peg. Because what was happening was I was creating situations where I was creating excuses for me to beat myself up because I would create mile-long to-do lists and not finish them. I would put stuff off and put stuff off and put stuff off until the very last minute that I could have been doing, 3-4 weeks before. Yeah. And all along, creating a negative monologue in my head of like, why aren't you doing this?
Yeah.
Like this is what you love. You, and beating myself up for like, you got the dream. You got to be your own boss.
Right.
You got to go into your day job and say I quit.
Yeah.
And now you're not taking advantage of it.
Yeah.
And just beating myself up and beating myself up and beating myself up. And I don't feel like I would have ever hit, if I never come to this conclusion, I could have gone through life the same, and working with my brain, working with what I thought was anxiety and, slowly but surely developing practices and things that would help. But now I feel like I just skipped 6 to 12 steps, right? And I feel like had I never figured this out, it would have cost me years of productivity. And really what it would have cost me was my potential. Yeah. Because if I never figured this out, there was a person sitting inside of me that I always knew that I could be, and a life that I always knew that I could have. And if I had never understood what was going on in my brain, that would have always just been a dangling carrot.
My God, drop that mic. You just fucking nailed that shit so hard. I mean, that's what I love to understand, because I feel like sometimes we as people are afraid, and so we don't take action or we don't make change. And that's something that's so special about you. I feel like, we had our last session and you were like, yo, I got this diagnosis. I'm so stoked. Yeah. I was like, this guy's so fucking adorable and amazing and just, positive about it. Like, you're right. It's just clarity on how your brain works.
Right.
Nothing wrong with it. And like you said, it's just fucking superpower.
Exactly. Like there was this great book that I read when I just thought that I might have it, called Faster Than Normal. And that really helped me reframe everything that was going on, of like, oh, okay, I can literally use this as a superpower.
It's awesome.
And it's the difference between looking at my life and going, I wasted 35 years not knowing this. How much could I have done?
Right.
And the difference between that and looking at it and going, holy shit, I spent 35 years not knowing this and I accomplished this much.
Right.
How much more can I accomplish now?
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
That's so good. I love this. Yes. So for everyone listening, don't be afraid.
Exactly.
Just learn about yourself. Really, like self-actualization. It's not about if whether something's wrong or not. It's really about more deeply understanding who you are, how you tick.
Absolutely. And in my experience, every time that I have stepped out and been open and vulnerable and either shared or asked the question of, either shared about like my anxiety or my ADHD, the response in droves has been nothing from people that I know and that I don't know, but compassion, empathy, a response of, oh my gosh, you have no idea how much I needed to hear that.
Yeah.
We all give everybody else so much credit and we don't give ourselves enough credit. We give everybody else all the compassion. We don't give ourselves any of the compassion. And every single time that I let down that shield of vulnerability and go, all right, maybe I do have ADHD. Let me dig into this and just see. Stuff like that always comes back 100-fold in positivity.
It's so good. So for those of you listening, Carlo said it. If you don't check out like your own damn self, it will cost you self-esteem. It'll cost you time. It'll cost you potential success and reaching your potential.
Absolutely.
I mean, are you fucking kidding me? Those are like all the things I care about. Like, I'm going to get tested right now.
Well, and it's also this thing of I'm walking around thinking that everybody's experiencing like the same feelings of panic that I am every day. I'm like, oh,
yeah.
Things could have been that much easier if it was just a matter of me being like, all right, maybe I have this. Let me run it up the flagpole and see if I do.
Right. And check it out. Exactly.
It's
so good.
There's no hurt in asking the question.
I love it.
Yeah.
Carlo, thank you so much
Thank
for
you
just
so much.
Being with me. It's interesting to hear your story, who you are, like what your path has been. I love having gotten to know you over the last 5 months.
Oh, that feeling is very mutual.
It's been ridiculous. You're just so amazing. It's gross. It's disgusting.
Well, then you're grosser at being amazing. Deal with that.
This is like backwards compliment, Dad.
Mutual Admiration Society.
I can't even get out of here. And thank you for sharing yourself with us on this podcast today, because I do feel like this whole ADHD thing is just so fucking fascinating.
Absolutely.
I like, for those of you listening, definitely holler, let us know if this affects you in any way, if you go get tested, if it changes your life, because it's just, to me, it's like a revelation. Like, I just feel like, wow, this is information people really need, because I feel like there's a lot of people out there who just don't know they have it.
Exactly.
Myself included.
Yeah, it's like some of us, our brains just work differently.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that, and
Yeah.
understanding that is absolutely fascinating.
Yes, totally.
Yeah.
Okay, so if anyone wants to find you, Carlo, where can they find you?
At Carlo Moss everywhere.
Okay.
And
Easy peasy.
Yeah, exactly. Most Popular Girls in School on YouTube. The companies that I run, the stop motion company is Extra Credit Studios. We have our own YouTube channel and website and all that if you want to see the stuff that we do there. And then my consulting company is Moranti Media. And
Boom.
we work with all kinds of creators and businesses and brands.
It's the coolest.
Yeah.
I know. I love that you're mentoring people in creativity now. That's are you hitting how many creative types, like you said? Like you wish you would have had that when you were starting out.
Exactly. That's literally what I said. I was
gosh.
like, all right, 5 years ago,
So
what do I
good.
wish existed? All right, let's just make it a thing.
Exactly.
One of my favorite songs in the world is by this band Against Me, and it's this line of "We can be the bands we want to hear."
I love that band, by the way.
Oh yes.
Oh, I love Walking Is Still Honest is like one of my all-time favorite songs.
Oh my God, yes. All right, well now this is just going to turn into another hour of us just talking about how much we love Against Me.
Exactly. Okay, so also quick little like clarity for people listening who are thinking about hiring a coach. Does not have to be me. Who are thinking about it but maybe on the fence or like aren't sure.
Absolutely.
What are your thoughts for them?
I think there's a reason why if you're thinking about it, there's a reason why it's already in your head. You're probably the type of person who seeks to better yourself at every turn. Having a coach in your life provides so much more structure, accountability, and an ability to share in your successes and your struggles than you would otherwise, than you would if you were just talking to a friend, if you were just writing in a journal. And it has literally, like I said, 6 months ago when we started working together, I said, this is what I want out of my life. And then it fucking happened. And our work together is a big part of that because it allows a context by which you can affirm the things that are in your head, the crazy, wild dreams that you keep to yourself. Well, now you have somebody that you can share it with, and that person can then affirm that and give you the steps to actually put them into place.
Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah.
You're the best, dude.
Now you're the best.
You're the best.
You're the best.
So if anyone out there is going to be as amazing of a client as Carlo, please hire me. Okay, bye. No, I'm just kidding. All right. Thank you for being with us. Everyone, I'll put all of his like info in the show notes so you can find him easily. He's amazing and hilarious. Totally check out his stuff on YouTube. It's ridiculous. And for those of you listening, thank you for being with us. I appreciate you. I know you could be spending your time in tons of other places, so I appreciate you being with us. Subscribe, rate, all the cheesy plugs I'm supposed to do.
Yeah,
and,
good stuff.
We'll catch you on the next one.
Yeah.
Bye.